Franz's only reply was to take a teaspoonful of the marvelous preparation, about as much in quantity as his host had eaten, and lift it to his mouth. "Diable!" he said, after swallowing the divine preserve. "I do not know if the result will be as agreeable as you described, but the thing does not appear to me as palatable as you say, because your palate has not yet been attuned to the sublimity of the substances it flavors. Tell me, the first time you tasted oysters, tea, porter, truffles, and sundry other dainties which you now adore, did you like them? Could you comprehend how the Romans stuffed their pheasants with acetida, and the Chinese eat swallows' nests? No, no. Well, it is the same with hashish. Only eat for a week, and nothing in the world will seem to you to equal the delicacy of its flavor, which now appears to you flat and distasteful. Let us now go into the adjoining chamber, which is your apartment, and Ali will bring us coffee and pipes." They both arose, and while he who called himself Sinbad, and whom we have occasionally named so, that we might, like his guest, have some title by which to distinguish him, gave some orders to the servant, Franz entered still another apartment. It was simply yet richly furnished. It was round, and a large divan completely encircled it. Divan, walls, ceiling, floor were all covered in magnificent skins, as soft and downy as the richest carpets. There were heavy-maned lion skins from Atlas, striped tiger skins from Bengal, panther skins from the Cape, spotted beautifully like those that appeared to Dante, bear skins from Siberia, fox skins from Norway, and so on. And all these skins were strewn in profusion one on the other, so that it seemed like walking over the mossy turf or reclining on the most luxurious bed. Dante seems, in these last 8 years, to have upped his game from just being a master of disguise and manipulation to literally being able to weave a dreamlike fantasy for someone. Is it all smoke and mirrors? Yes, of course. But you can imagine the disorienting nature Franz is experiencing here, where he's blindfolded, brought to essentially a cave, and within the cave sees fortunes and this enclave of servants all surrounding what seems to be an ever-powerful figure who offers him a food that he says is going to change his perception of heaven and hell and all earthly delights. Franz takes that, and then he's ushered even further into the cavern. This is his third apartment now within this cavern. So it's seemingly like you're entering Doctor Who's TARDIS, where it's just bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, and each room presents new wondrous things that you wouldn't have expected. You're losing your sense of reality at this point, and you're being given something that you are psychologically expecting to change your perception, and you only have one guide through it, and that's Dante, or Sinbad, as we're calling him. So Dante really kind of taking a Svengali approach. Is Svengali the right metaphor there? I just realized that I maybe don't know the details of Svengali. Yeah, okay, so he was a mesmerist who dominates. Yeah, I stand by it. I stand by it, folks. I made a reference off the cuff, and turns out I can be okay with it. I'll live with that reference. Listen, these don't seem like the actions of a honorable person. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know what Dante's up to here, but it is curious, huh? Some of you know. Some of you who've read this story before, who are going through this again, you know. I don't. And in this moment, I am unmoored. I'm feeling more akin to Franz than I am to Dante at this point in the story. I'm actually starting to fear for Franz a little bit. It's one of those things where the more generous and kind someone is, the more suspect they become. So Dante, with his... he doesn't know Franz from Joe across the street right now, and offering him all of this stuff. I mean, this could just be any old schmo from the mainland coming to the island, and Dante is offering him hashish and taking him down this journey. I'm not going to go into full speculation mode here. I'm just going to dip my toe there, which is to say, would he do that without fully knowing who Franz is? With Dante's wealth, I feel like he would not only know who is coming to his island before they get there, but could actually, in a kind of Wicker Man sort of scenario, have set up the circumstances in which to lure him there. And I know I've spent a lot of time on that theory at the forefront of this chapter, but it just wouldn't make sense otherwise. Wow. Okay. We've done a lot of references this week. Svengali, Wicker Man, others. And also, I just want to point out, because why not? I'm here. When we're going through Franz's experience with all of those different animal skins, not a fan of that. I'm a vegetarian and animal lover, and nothing makes me more uncomfortable than being in the house of someone who puts trophies on their walls. But that's just me. I'm not casting judgment on anyone. I'm just being honest in my experience. But anyway, as he's going through all of that stuff, he says that all of those things were like those that appeared to Dante. Now, Dante is not the Dante of this story. I think he is referring to Dante Alighieri, the author of the Divine Comedy. Okay, so we got a few minutes. I'll just kind of wrap up some thoughts on Alexander Mackay initially, but we will definitely be going more into him as the story unfolds and continues. We have 3 years left, and here's what I want to say. First and foremost, with all of this in mind, I talked about the literary genius, the soul genius, that myth that we tell ourselves because it's fun to do so. It gives us something to aspire to, something to admire, and it makes the story easier to tell. But there's a danger to that in recognizing that no art is created in a vacuum. All art is created in conversation with something else, in homage to something else, inspired by something else, in argument with something else. And I think there's this danger to looking at things from that perspective that makes it unattainable for other creatives. You know, now that we've had 100 years almost of this deification of the lone genius, we can maybe start to examine the level of art that's being created. Now, I want to be careful with that conversation to go, well, nothing today is art the way that it was 100 years ago, whatever. That's not what I'm interested in discussing, but like the lone genius is someone who stands above the rest. It's something, while it's aspirational, it's unattainable. And it's a fallacy because it's not true. So when you have that looming over your head, like, who's the last Hemingway that we had? Who's the last Shirley Jackson? You can make your arguments, but I think that we've been in a drought of incredible generationally defining art for a long time, and it's only when we try to recognize one sole person as a genius that we then put their stuff into that pantheon. But there's a danger to that as well, because suddenly we are putting a single person's voice above all others. This is part of my ire when it comes to Quentin Tarantino. I'm not going to go into that now because I will admit I do get riled up. But all of I'm trying to say is that despite what we think, art is a collaborative process. And by deifying one person, you are silencing the voices of others. Now, I'm speaking very generally here. I don't know much about Auguste Mackay, and I'm not advocating for him as a person. It's just a situation that has highlighted the fact that this is a story that we tell ourselves and reinforce over and over and over again when the reality is much different. So I think where I want to end this Mackay situation, this Mackay conversation, is by acknowledging that Alexandre Dumas operates less as a single author than as a brand. You are picking up an Alexandre Dumas book because you understand what to expect from it. that's brand management rather than authorship. It's style. There is a modern day equivalence to this too, where you look at someone like Clive Cussler or James Patterson, R.L. Stine. These are all authors who, Michael Crichton, who's been dead and is still putting out books. These are all authors who have created the brand name from their name, and other authors contribute to that brand in order to deliver to consumers what they expect out of a certain kind of story. You know, when you're picking up a Tom Clancy book, you're picking up an expectation. When you're picking up a James Patterson book, you're picking up an expectation, a vibe. What do I want for my airplane journey this month? I want a James Patterson story. You know, that is less speaking to a specific author than it is speaking to the style of the story. And that's something that many people contribute to. So I want to move forward, not to diminish the work of Alexandre Dumas by any means. As I had mentioned before, a critic said there is no Alexandre Dumas without Auguste Maquet, but there is also no Auguste Maquet without Alexandre Dumas. I might be paraphrasing that wrong. I think actually it was there's no Count of Monte Cristo without Alexandre Dumas, and there's no Count of Monte Cristo without Auguste Maquet. So what we can do, I think, is to have a more rich conversation about what it is that Alexandre Dumas is bringing to this, what Auguste Maquet is bringing to this, rather than just attributing it all to one person and creating and sustaining the mythology around that person. And it's not just Alexandre Dumas. I think we need to do that with everyone. Charles Dickens is another one that used a writer's room of folks in order to churn out his content. I'm sure a ton of the prolific classic authors did the same thing, especially those who serialized stuff. So that's all I've got for today. Another long episode in a string of long episodes. Thank you for hanging in there. We are about to wrap up Chapter 31. It has been a long one, so join me here tomorrow as we hurtle headlong toward the end. Until then, okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.